The bucket was heavy. Eleanor's arms burned as she carried it across the marble floor. Water sloshed over the sides and soaked into her worn dress. She did not stop. She could not stop. Lady Pemberton would inspect the floors in an hour, and every inch had to shine like glass. Eleanor dropped to her knees. The cold stone bit through the thin fabric of her skirt. She dipped her brush into the soapy water and began to scrub. Back and forth. Back and forth. Her hands were red and cracked. The skin on her knuckles had split open weeks ago and never healed. Each stroke of the brush sent sharp pains up her arms. "Still at it, are you?" a voice sneered from above. Eleanor kept her eyes down. She knew that voice. It belonged to Margaret, Lady Pemberton's daughter. Margaret was 19, just 2 years younger than Eleanor, but Margaret wore silk gowns and had servants to dress her hair. Eleanor wore rags and scrubbed floors. "I asked you a question, girl." "Yes, miss," Eleanor whispered. Margaret's shoe appeared in Eleanor's vision, a pretty satin slipper, pale blue with silver ribbons. Margaret placed it directly in the section Eleanor had just cleaned. Then she twisted her foot, grinding dirt into the wet floor. "You missed a spot," Margaret said. She laughed and walked away, her skirts rustling. Eleanor's throat tightened. She would not cry. She had learned long ago that tears changed nothing. She simply moved her bucket and started over on the soiled section. 3 years. She had been scrubbing these floors for 3 years, ever since her father died and left her with nothing but debts. Her uncle had taken her in, he said, out of charity, but his wife, Lady Pemberton, had other ideas. No niece of hers would live as a lady when she brought no fortune to the house. "You will earn your keep," Lady Pemberton had declared on Eleanor's first day. "You will work as the lowest maid. You will sleep in the servants' quarters. You will speak only when spoken to." And so Eleanor had fallen from the life she knew. She had once attended balls and worn pretty dresses. She had once been called beautiful, with her dark hair and unusual violet eyes. But that life was gone now, buried with her father. The other servants pitied her at first, but pity faded when Lady Pemberton made it clear that kindness to Eleanor would result in dismissal. Now they ignored her. She was invisible, a shadow that moved through the house on her knees. Eleanor finished the entrance hall as the clock struck 10. Her back ached, her hands throbbed, but the floor gleamed. Lady Pemberton could find no fault with her work. She never did. Eleanor made sure of that. She carried her bucket toward the kitchen. As she passed the drawing room, she heard voices, male voices, guests. She moved more quickly. Lady Pemberton did not allow her to be seen when visitors called, but she was not quick enough. "Good heavens, what is that creature?" Eleanor froze. A gentleman stood in the hallway staring at her. He was young and handsome, dressed in fine clothes. His lip curled as he looked at her stained dress and raw hands. "That is no one, Lord Ashworth." Lady Pemberton's voice came from behind him. "Merely a servant. Girl, remove yourself at once." Eleanor ducked her head and hurried away, but not before she saw the gentleman's expression. Disgust. She was used to that look. In the kitchen, Mrs. Davies, the cook, pressed a roll into Eleanor's hand. "Eat quickly," she whispered, "before anyone sees." Eleanor nodded her thanks. Mrs. Davies was the only one who still showed her any kindness. She ate the roll in 3 bites. It was the first food she had eaten since yesterday's morning gruel. "You're too thin," Mrs. Davies said, shaking her head. "That woman is cruel, working you like this." "I have a roof over my head," Eleanor said softly. "That is more than many have." It was what she told herself every night. She was alive. She was surviving. That had to be enough. That afternoon, Eleanor worked in the garden. She pulled weeds from between the rose bushes. The thorns caught at her dress and scratched her arms. She welcomed the pain. It reminded her she could still feel something. "Eleanor." The voice was soft, almost kind. She looked up. Her uncle stood there, his face uncomfortable. He rarely spoke to her. When he did, guilt always shadowed his eyes. "Yes, sir." "I wanted to tell you." He paused, then shook his head. "Lady Pemberton has guests coming next week. Important guests. You must stay completely out of sight. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "If you are seen, if you embarrass this household in any way—" He trailed off, but the threat was clear. Eleanor nodded. Her uncle walked away quickly, as if escaping something unpleasant. She returned to the weeds, but her mind wandered to the past. She remembered her father's laugh. She remembered the way he used to dance with her in the parlor, humming a waltz. She remembered feeling safe and loved. "Foolish thoughts," she whispered to herself. "That life is gone." As the sun set, Eleanor retreated to her room. It was not really a room, just a corner of the attic with a thin mattress on the floor. But it was hers. Here, alone, she could remove the mask of submission she wore all day. She sat by the small window and looked at the stars. Somewhere, she thought, there must be people who were kind. People who saw worth in others beyond money and status. But perhaps that was just a story, a fairy tale for children. She pulled her sleeve up and looked at her shoulder. There, on her skin, was a mark she had carried since birth. It was shaped like a rose, perfect and distinct. Her father had called it special. He had said it meant she was destined for something greater. But destiny, it seemed, had other plans. Eleanor covered the mark and lay down on her mattress. Tomorrow would be the same as today, and the day after would be the same as tomorrow. This was her life now. She had accepted it. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but the tears came anyway, silent and hot against her cheeks. She cried for the girl she used to be. She cried for the father she had lost. She cried for the future that would never come. Tomorrow, she told herself, she would be strong again. Tomorrow, she would endure. But tonight, in the darkness of her attic prison, she let herself break just a little. Miles away, in a grand estate that dwarfed her uncle's house, another soul lay awake in the darkness. The Duke's empty hall. Julian Blackwood, Duke of Rothshire, sat alone in his study. A fire burned in the hearth, but he felt no warmth from it. He stared at the portrait above the mantel. His wife, dead these 2 years past. Elizabeth had been beautiful and kind. Their marriage had been arranged, but they had grown to care for each other. Then fever took her, sudden and merciless. She died in 3 days, and Julian's heart had frozen over. Now he was 30 years old and utterly alone. His estate was vast, his wealth was enormous, his title was one of the highest in England, but his house felt like a tomb. "Your Grace." His butler, Henderson, appeared at the door. "Forgive the intrusion, but you have been sitting in the dark for 3 hours." Julian looked at the window. It was indeed dark outside. He had not noticed. "I am fine, Henderson. Perhaps you should retire for the evening." "Perhaps you should mind your own affairs," Julian said, but there was no real anger in his voice. Henderson had served his family for 40 years. He was more a father than a servant. Henderson bowed and left, but not before lighting several lamps. The sudden brightness hurt Julian's eyes. He stood and walked to his desk. Papers waited there, matters of business that required his attention. He had tenants who depended on him, investments to manage, a seat in Parliament to maintain. His life was full of responsibilities, but it was empty of meaning. His mother wrote to him constantly, urging him to remarry. "You need an heir," she insisted. "You need a companion. You cannot mourn forever." But Julian had no desire to replace Elizabeth. The thought of courting some young lady, of making pleasant conversation and pretending to feel something, exhausted him. He would rather be alone. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter." It was his land steward, Mr. Winters. "Your Grace, I have the quarterly reports." Julian listened as Winters detailed the state of his various properties. Tenant farmers, crop yields, repairs needed. It was all tedious but necessary. And the Pemberton estate? Julian asked. He had business dealings with Lord Pemberton, though he did not like the man much. They are behind on payments, Your Grace. Lord Pemberton has requested an extension. Julian frowned. Again? Yes, Your Grace. He blames the economy, but I suspect mismanagement. I see, Julian considered. Send word that I will call on him next week. I wish to see the estate for myself before making any decisions. Winters bowed and departed. Julian returned to his window. The grounds of his estate stretched before him, beautiful and perfectly maintained. But they gave him no pleasure. Nothing gave him pleasure anymore. He touched the ring on his finger, the one Elizabeth had given him. I am sorry, he whispered to her memory. I am sorry I could not save you. I am sorry I am not strong enough to move forward. But the dead do not answer, and Julian was left alone with his regrets. That night he dreamed of warmth and laughter. He dreamed of a house filled with life instead of silence. He dreamed of violet eyes that held no fear, no judgment, only understanding. He woke before dawn, the dream fading like mist. But something in his chest had shifted, just slightly, as if some frozen part of him had begun, ever so slowly, to thaw. The Duke arrived at Pemberton Manor on a Tuesday morning. Eleanor knew because the household had been in chaos for 3 days preparing for his visit. She had been ordered to stay completely hidden. Lady Pemberton even locked the door to the attic to ensure Eleanor could not accidentally wander into sight. For 2 days, Eleanor sat in her prison, with only a bucket for necessities and a bit of bread and water twice a day. She did not mind the isolation. It was almost peaceful. On the 3rd day she heard shouting below, then footsteps on the attic stairs. The lock turned, and Lady Pemberton appeared, her face red with fury. "Get up," she hissed. Eleanor scrambled to her feet. "Yes, my lady." "You will come with me. Do not speak. Do not look anyone in the eye. Do not breathe unless I tell you to." Eleanor followed her aunt down the stairs, through the servants' passages, and into the main house. They stopped outside her uncle's study. Lady Pemberton grabbed Eleanor's arm so hard it would leave bruises. "Whatever happens in there, you will agree to it. Do you understand?" Eleanor's heart began to pound. "I do not understand, my lady." Lady Pemberton's eyes narrowed. "The Duke has made a proposal. You should be grateful. Now be silent." They entered the study. Lord Pemberton sat behind his desk, looking ill. The Duke stood by the window, his back to them. He was tall, with dark hair and broad shoulders. Even without seeing his face, Eleanor could feel the power radiating from him. "Your Grace," Lady Pemberton said, her voice suddenly sweet. "This is Eleanor." The Duke turned. His eyes met Eleanor's for the first time. She forgot to breathe. He was handsome, yes, but that was not what struck her. It was his eyes. They were grey, like storm clouds, and they held such deep sadness that Eleanor felt it in her own chest. Julian stared at the girl before him. She was thin, too thin, and her dress was little better than rags. Her hands were red and damaged. Her hair was pulled back severely. But her face was lovely, with high cheekbones and a gentle mouth, and her eyes, those extraordinary violet eyes, looked at him with something he had not seen in a long time. They held no calculation, no greed, no ambition, only confusion and a kind of wounded dignity that made his throat tighten. "Leave us," he said. "Your Grace?" Lord Pemberton stood. "Surely that is not proper." "I said leave us." Julian's voice was cold, the voice of a man accustomed to obedience. The Pembertons left, though Lady Pemberton looked like she wanted to protest. The door closed, and Julian was alone with Eleanor. "Sit," he said, gentler now. Eleanor sat in the chair across from his. She kept her eyes down, her hands folded in her lap. "Look at me." Slowly, she raised her eyes. Julian moved closer, studying her face. There was a bruise on her cheek, fading but still visible. Her lip was slightly split. Her neck bore the marks of fingers. Rage, hot and sudden, flooded through him. "Who struck you?" Eleanor flinched. I am clumsy, Your Grace. I fell." "Do not lie to me." His voice was sharp. He took a breath and softened it. "Please, do not lie." Eleanor's composure cracked, just slightly. "It does not matter, Your Grace." "It matters to me." Silence fell between them. Julian pulled another chair close and sat, so they were at eye level. He had come to Pemberton Manor intending to investigate the estate's finances. What he found instead shocked him. The servants talked when questioned privately. They told him about Eleanor, about how she was worked to exhaustion, about how she was beaten for the smallest mistakes, about how she was locked away and starved. Lord Pemberton, when confronted, admitted it all with shameless ease. "She is a burden. Her father left debts. She has no fortune, no prospects. At least here she earns her food." Julian had felt such fury that he nearly struck the man. Instead, he made an offer. A cruel offer, perhaps, but one that would free this girl from her prison. Now, looking at Eleanor's frightened face, he wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. "Eleanor," he began, "I am going to speak plainly. Your uncle owes me a considerable sum of money. He cannot pay. I have proposed an arrangement that will settle his debt and provide you with a different life." Eleanor's hands tightened in her lap. "What arrangement, Your Grace?" "Marriage." The word hung in the air like a stone. Eleanor's face went white. "I need a wife," Julian continued, though the words felt like glass in his mouth. "Not for love. I do not pretend to offer that. But for companionship, for an heir, for the management of my household. In return, you would have safety, comfort, respect. You would never scrub another floor. You would never go hungry. You would be a duchess." Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. "Why me?" "Because your uncle offered you, and because—" Julian paused, searching for words. "Because I saw your hands. I saw your bruises. And I cannot walk away knowing what will happen to you if I do." Tears filled Eleanor's eyes. "You pity me." "I pity the people who broke you," Julian said quietly. "But I respect the strength it took to survive them." Eleanor looked at him then, really looked at him. She saw his sadness. She saw his loneliness. She saw a man as trapped by his circumstances as she was by hers. "I have nothing to offer you, Your Grace," she said. "I cannot be the wife a duke deserves. I do not know how to be a lady anymore. I would only embarrass you." "Eleanor," he said her name like it mattered. "I am not asking for perfection. I am asking for partnership. We both need escape from our current lives. Perhaps we can help each other find it." She closed her eyes. What choice did she have, really? Stay here and die slowly under Lady Pemberton's cruelty, or take a chance on this strange, sad duke who spoke to her like she was human? "Yes," she whispered. "I will marry you." Julian felt relief and guilt in equal measure. "We will marry in 3 days. I will send a carriage for you. Until then, you will not stay in this house another night. I am taking you to an inn where you will be safe." Eleanor's eyes widened. "Your Grace, the scandal!" "Let them talk. I am a duke. They will talk regardless." He stood and offered his hand. "Come." Eleanor placed her small, damaged hand in his large one. The touch sent something warm through both of them, surprising and unwelcome. Julian led her from the room. Lady Pemberton tried to stop them, but Julian's glare silenced her. He put Eleanor in his carriage and sat across from her. As they rolled away from Pemberton Manor, Eleanor watched the house disappear. She should feel joy. Instead, she felt numb. She had escaped one prison, but she was entering another. A golden prison, perhaps, but a prison nonetheless. She looked at the Duke. He stared out the window, his face unreadable. He had saved her, but not out of love, out of duty, out of pity, out of some need of his own. It would be enough. It had to be. "Thank you, Your Grace," she said softly. He turned to her. For a moment, his expression softened. "Julian, when we are alone, you may call me Julian." "Julian," she repeated. The name felt strange on her tongue, intimate. "And I will call you Eleanor, if that is acceptable." She nodded. They fell silent again, two strangers bound together by circumstance, riding toward an uncertain future. The wedding. The wedding was small and quiet. Only necessary witnesses attended. Eleanor wore a simple dress that Julian had provided. It was the finest thing she had touched in 3 years. Soft blue silk that made her eyes look even more violet. A maid had helped her bathe and dress. Eleanor had wept when she saw herself in the mirror. She looked human again, almost pretty. Now she stood in the small chapel beside Julian. The vicar droned through the ceremony. Eleanor's hands shook as Julian slid the ring onto her finger. It was gold and heavy, set with a single, perfect sapphire. "I now pronounce you man and wife." Julian lifted her veil. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then he leaned down and kissed her, gentle and brief. His lips were warm. Eleanor's heart stuttered. It was done. She was the Duchess of Rothshire. The carriage ride to Julian's estate took 3 hours. Eleanor watched the countryside pass, her mind spinning. Everything had happened so fast. 3 days ago she was scrubbing floors. Now she wore silk and jewels and carried a title. "Are you afraid?" Julian asked suddenly. Eleanor considered lying, then decided against it. "Yes." "Of me?" "Of disappointing you, of failing, of not knowing how to be what you need." Julian was quiet for a moment. "I am afraid too." Eleanor looked at him in surprise. "You? What could a duke fear?" "Failure," he admitted. "I failed my first wife. I could not save her. I could not make her happy in the time we had. I fear I will fail you too." "How did she die?" Eleanor asked softly. "Fever. It was sudden. She was laughing at breakfast, and 3 days later she was gone." Pain crossed his face. "I would give anything to have those days back, to have told her I loved her more, to have held her longer." Eleanor's heart ached for him. "I am sorry." "As am I." He looked at her. "I do not pretend this marriage will be a love match, Eleanor, but I promise you this. I will treat you with kindness. I will protect you. I will honor my vows to you. You will never want for anything." "Except love," Eleanor said quietly. Julian's jaw tightened. "Except that. Love has brought me only pain. I cannot risk it again." Eleanor nodded. She understood. They were both broken people, making the best arrangement they could. It was practical. It was safe. It was desperately sad. They arrived at Rothshire Hall as the sun set. Eleanor gasped when she saw it. The house was enormous, 3 times the size of Pemberton Manor. Beautiful gardens surrounded it. Lights glowed in every window. "It is too much," she whispered. "I cannot manage such a house." "You will have help," Julian assured her. "The housekeeper, Mrs. Crawford, runs everything. You need only give her direction." Henderson met them at the door. His old eyes widened when he saw Eleanor, but he bowed respectfully. "Welcome home, Your Grace." The title startled Eleanor. She was Your Grace now. It felt absurd. Julian led her through halls filled with beautiful furniture and paintings. Servants lined up to meet her, bowing and curtsying. Eleanor's head spun with names and faces. Finally, they reached her chambers. Eleanor stopped in the doorway, stunned. The room was beautiful, decorated in soft greens and golds. A fire burned in the hearth. The bed was enormous, piled with pillows and covered in a thick quilt. "These are your private rooms," Julian said. "No one will enter without your permission. My chambers are through that door. He pointed to a connecting door. But I will not use it unless you invite me. Eleanor turned to him. You do not wish to... We are married, Your Grace. Julian, he corrected gently, and I wish for you to feel safe. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, you need only tell me. Until then, your rooms are your sanctuary. Tears pricked Eleanor's eyes. He was being so kind, so careful with her. It made her chest ache. Thank you, Julian. He nodded and moved toward the connecting door, but he paused at the threshold. Eleanor? Yes? You are not a disappointment. You could never be. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Eleanor sank onto the bed. The mattress was soft, so soft. Clean sheets, warm blankets, a pillow that smelled of lavender. She lay back and stared at the ceiling. She was safe. She was fed. She had a roof over her head that would never leak. She had clothes that were not rags. She had a husband who, if he did not love her, at least treated her with dignity. It was more than she had dared to hope for. But as sleep finally claimed her, Eleanor's last thought was this. Safety was wonderful, but how she longed to be loved. The first week passed in a blur. Eleanor woke each morning expecting to find herself back in the attic. Instead, she woke to sunlight and a maid bringing tea. The maid, a sweet girl named Rose, helped her dress in fine gowns and styled her hair. Eleanor ate meals in the dining room with Julian. They spoke little at first, the silences awkward and heavy. But slowly they began to find their way to conversation. How do you take your tea? Julian asked on the third morning. With honey, if available, Eleanor said. My father used to say honey made everything sweeter. Julian smiled just slightly. Your father was right. He passed her the honey pot. On the fourth day, Eleanor ventured to the library. She gasped when she saw it. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. She had not held a book in 3 years. May I? She asked Julian, who was reading by the fire. Of first, everything here is yours. Eleanor ran her fingers along the spines, marveling. She pulled out a volume of poetry and sat in a chair near Julian. For an hour, they read in comfortable silence. When Eleanor looked up, she found Julian watching her. What is it? She asked. You look happy, he said. It suits you. Eleanor flushed. Books were my only friends as a child. I miss them. Then you must spend as much time here as you wish. Julian stood. I have a state business, but please, make yourself at home. As the days passed, Eleanor began to relax. The house staff treated her with respect. Mrs. Crawford, the housekeeper, was firm but kind. She taught Eleanor the routines of the household without making her feel ignorant. You're a natural, Your Grace, Mrs. Crawford said after Eleanor settled a dispute between 2 maids. Firm but fair. The staff appreciates that. Eleanor also explored the grounds. The gardens were beautiful, full of roses and lavender. She found a bench by a pond and sat there for hours, watching ducks paddle across the water. After 3 years of being locked inside, the freedom to simply sit in the sun felt like a miracle. One afternoon, Julian found her there. May I join you? Of course. They sat together, watching the ducks. Julian looked more relaxed here than in the house. His shoulders had lost some of their tension. Elizabeth loved this spot, he said quietly. She would bring a book and read here for hours. Eleanor glanced at him. Do you miss her very much? Every day. Julian's voice was raw. We were not passionately in love, but we cared for each other. She was kind and gentle. She deserved more years than she was given. I am sorry I am not her, Eleanor said softly. Julian turned to her, surprised. I am not looking for you to be her, Eleanor. You are your own person, with your own value. But you wish she were here instead of me. Julian was quiet for a long moment. I wish she were alive. But that does not mean I regret bringing you here. You have brought something to this house that has been missing. What? Life, he said simply. The servants smile more. The house feels less like a museum. And I find myself... He paused. I find myself looking forward to dinner, to our conversations, to seeing your face when you discover something new in the library. Eleanor's heart fluttered. Truly. Truly. Julian stood, clearly uncomfortable with the intimacy of the conversation. I must return to work, but thank you, Eleanor, for being here. He walked away, leaving Eleanor alone with her racing thoughts. He noticed her. He saw her. That should not matter so much, but it did. That evening at dinner, Julian asked about her childhood. Eleanor told him about her father, about their small but happy home, about the days before everything fell apart. He taught me to love books, she said, and to see beauty in small things, a flower, a sunrise, a kind word. He said life was made of moments, and we must treasure them. He sounds like a wise man, Julian said. He was, Eleanor's voice caught. I miss him terribly. Julian reached across the table and took her hand. The gesture surprised them both, but he did not pull away, and neither did she. I am glad you had him, Julian said, even if it was not for long enough. That night, Eleanor lay in bed replaying the feel of Julian's hand in hers. It had been warm and strong. It had made her feel safe. More than safe. It had made her feel something she was afraid to name. She got out of bed and walked to the connecting door. She pressed her palm against the wood. On the other side was Julian. Was he asleep? Was he also lying awake thinking of her? No, she was being foolish. He had married her out of pity and necessity. She must not confuse kindness with affection. But as she returned to bed, her heart would not listen to her mind. It beat faster. It hoped. And hope, Eleanor was learning, could be both wonderful and terrifying. The following week brought a change. Julian had business in London and asked Eleanor to accompany him. She was nervous about meeting society, but Julian assured her it would be fine. You are a duchess now, he said. They will treat you with respect. The London townhouse was smaller than Rothshire Hall, but still grand. That evening, they attended a small dinner party. Eleanor wore a gown of deep purple that made her eyes luminous. Julian stared when he saw her. You look beautiful, he said, and meant it. Eleanor blushed. Thank you. At the party, Eleanor was terrified, but Julian stayed by her side, his hand at her back, guiding and supporting her. When a gentleman made a comment about Eleanor being unknown to society, Julian's voice turned to ice. My wife comes from an excellent family. Her worth is beyond question. Do you understand? The gentleman paled and apologized. No one questioned Eleanor again. On the carriage ride home, Eleanor was quiet. Julian noticed. Did I overstep? I did not mean to embarrass you. No, Eleanor said quickly. No one has ever defended me before. Not in 3 years. I did not know how it would feel. How does it feel? Eleanor looked at him, her eyes shining. It feels like I matter. Something in Julian's chest cracked open. You do matter, Eleanor. Very much. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither could name. Julian wanted to pull her close, to kiss her properly, to show her just how much she had come to mean to him. But he held back. He had promised not to push her. He would keep that promise. But that night, alone in his room, Julian admitted the truth to himself. He was falling for his wife. Her courage, her gentleness, her quiet strength, all of it called to something deep in his soul. She was healing parts of him he thought were dead forever. It terrified him. The next morning, Julian found Eleanor in the garden again. She was kneeling by the roses, examining them carefully. Do you garden? He asked. I used to help my father, but at Pemberton Manor I only pulled weeds. Eleanor touched a pink bloom. These are beautiful. They were Elizabeth's favourite. Eleanor pulled her hand back as if burned. Julian cursed himself. Why had he mentioned Elizabeth? But Eleanor surprised him. I am glad you keep them. Memories should be honoured, not erased. Julian knelt beside her. You are very understanding. I know grief. I know loss. I would not ask you to forget her. But I am trying, Julian admitted. Not to forget her, but to move forward, to live again. You have helped me do that. Eleanor's breath caught. Julian. I know I said this would not be a love match, Julian continued, his voice rough with emotion. But I find that my heart does not listen to logic. Eleanor, I am beginning to care for you. Deeply. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I care for you too. So much that it frightens me. Julian reached up and cupped her face. His thumb brushed away a tear. Do not be frightened. Not of this. But what if you realize I am not enough? What if... Julian silenced her with a kiss. It was soft at first, then deeper. Eleanor's hands came up to his chest, then his shoulders, pulling him closer. The kiss was everything. Promise, passion, hope. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Julian rested his forehead against Eleanor's. You are enough. You are more than enough. You are everything I never knew I needed. Say it again, Eleanor whispered. You are everything. Eleanor kissed him again, pouring 3 years of loneliness and pain into it. Julian held her like she was precious, like she might disappear if he let go. When they finally stood, Julian kept her hand in his. Eleanor, I know we agreed to separate rooms, but I wonder, would you consider, that is, I would very much like... Yes, Eleanor said, smiling through her tears. Yes to whatever you are trying to ask. Julian laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. Then tonight, no more separate rooms. Tonight, we will truly be husband and wife. Eleanor nodded, her heart soaring. She had not thought she could ever feel this way again. Happy, wanted, loved. Because that was what she saw in Julian's eyes. Love. Real, growing, undeniable love. That evening, as the sun set, Julian and Eleanor stood together at the window of his chamber. No words were needed. They simply held each other, grateful for the unexpected gift they had found. Two broken people, healing each other. Two lonely souls, finding home. It was not the life either had planned, but it was better than anything they had dared to hope for. 3 months of happiness. That was all they were given before the past came calling. Eleanor woke one morning feeling unwell. She dismissed it as something she ate. But when the feeling persisted for several days, Mrs. Crawford suggested calling the doctor. Dr. Morrison examined Eleanor and smiled. Congratulations, Your Grace. You are with child. Eleanor's hand flew to her stomach. A baby. She was going to have Julian's baby. Joy flooded through her, so strong it made her dizzy. Julian was in London on business. Eleanor wanted to tell him in person, so she kept the news to herself. She spent her days imagining their child. Would it have Julian's grey eyes, her dark hair? Would Julian be pleased? Of course he would be. An heir. That was part of why he had married her. But a small voice in her head whispered, what if that is all he wanted? What if now that you have given him an heir, you are no longer necessary? Eleanor tried to silence the voice. Julian loved her. He had said so. He showed her every day in 1,000 small ways. But the fear lingered. Julian returned a week later, looking tired. Eleanor ran to him, throwing her arms around him. He held her tight, breathing in her scent. I missed you, he murmured. I have news, Eleanor said, pulling back to look at him. Wonderful news. Before she could speak, Henderson appeared. Your Grace, you have a visitor, Lady Pemberton. Eleanor's blood turned to ice. Julian felt her stiffen in his arms. Tell her to leave, he said coldly. She insists it is urgent, Your Grace. She has documents. Julian cursed under his breath. Very well, Eleanor, go upstairs. I will handle this. But Eleanor shook her head. No. Whatever she has to say, I will hear it. They entered the drawing room together. Lady Pemberton stood there, looking triumphant. Margaret stood beside her, smirking. Your Grace, Lady Pemberton said, her voice dripping false sweetness. How kind of you to see me. State your business and leave, Julian said flatly. Lady Pemberton's smile widened. I came to warn you. You have been deceived. Eleanor is not who she claims to be. Eleanor's heart began to pound. What are you talking about? Your father, Lady Pemberton said, was not a gentleman. He was a fraud. His title was false. He had debts across England. And you, my dear niece, have no claim to gentility whatsoever. That is a lie, Eleanor whispered. Lady Pemberton pulled papers from her bag. These are legal documents. Your father bought a false title. When he died, the truth came out. You are common-born, Eleanor, no better than a street rat. Julian took the papers and examined them. Eleanor watched his face, searching for his reaction. Would he believe this? Would he turn on her? Even if this is true, Julian said slowly, it changes nothing. Lady Pemberton laughed. It changes everything. She has deceived you. Your marriage may not even be legal, and when society learns, you will be ruined. A duke married to a commoner? The scandal will destroy you. Margaret stepped forward. Unless you annul the marriage, set her aside, then I could. Silence! Julian's voice cracked like a whip. He turned to Eleanor. Did you know about this? Eleanor's throat closed. My father never told me. I believed him to be what he claimed, but after he died, there were rumors. I did not know if they were true. Why did you not tell me? Because I was afraid, Eleanor said, tears streaming down her face. I was afraid you would send me back. I was afraid you would believe I had trapped you. Julian's face was unreadable. He looked at the papers again, then at Lady Pemberton. Get out of my house. But, Your Grace. Get out before I have you thrown out. Lady Pemberton and Margaret left, but not before Margaret whispered to Eleanor. He will never forgive you. You are nothing. When they were gone, Julian sank into a chair. Eleanor stood frozen, waiting for his judgment. Julian, she began, please, I need time, he said quietly. I need to think. Do you want me to leave? No, yes, I do not know. Julian rubbed his face. Eleanor, I asked you for honesty. You kept this from me. I did not know for certain, and when I fell in love with you, I was too afraid to risk losing you. Love? Julian looked up. You say you love me, but you lied to me. I did not lie. I simply did not tell you something I was not sure of. It is the same thing. Eleanor's heart shattered. So that is it? All of our happiness, all of our plans, it is all destroyed because of my father's deception. I do not know, Julian said. I need time to think. Please go to your room. Eleanor fled. She ran to her chamber and collapsed on the bed, sobbing. Everything was ruined. Lady Pemberton had won. Eleanor had been happy for 3 months, and now it was all being ripped away. She thought of the baby growing inside her. She had not told Julian. Now she did not know if she should. What if he thought she was trying to trap him with a child? What if he demanded proof the baby was even his? For 3 days, Julian avoided her. He took his meals in his study. He slept in a guest room. Eleanor felt like she was dying. The house that had become her home now felt like another prison. On the 4th day, Henderson came to her room. Your Grace, the Duke requests your presence in the library. Eleanor's hands shook as she walked downstairs. Julian stood by the window, his back to her. "You asked to see me," she said softly. "I have investigated Lady Pemberton's claims," Julian said, still not turning. "They are true. Your father was born common. He bought a false title to improve his prospects. When he died, his creditors revealed the fraud." Eleanor closed her eyes. "I see. But I also learned something else." Julian finally turned to face her. "Your father loved you desperately. Every penny he earned, he spent on your education and comfort. He bought the title not for himself, but to give you a chance at a better life. He died trying to provide for you." Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. "He was a good man, a kind man. I do not care if he had a title or not." "Neither do I," Julian said quietly. "Eleanor, I have been a fool. I have let fear rule me. Fear that I was betrayed, fear that I had been trapped, fear that I would be hurt again." "I never meant to hurt you," Eleanor sobbed. "I know." Julian crossed to her and took her hands. "And I am sorry I hurt you. These past 3 days have been torture. I missed you. I missed your voice, your laugh, your presence. The house felt dead without you." "You are not angry?" "I was, but anger faded, and what remained was love. Eleanor, I do not care about your father's title. I do not care what society thinks. I care about you. Only you." Eleanor threw herself into his arms. Julian held her tight, his own tears falling into her hair. "I have news," Eleanor whispered. "I was going to tell you the day Lady Pemberton arrived." "What news?" Eleanor pulled back and looked at him. "I am with child." Julian's eyes widened. "Truly?" "Truly." A smile broke across Julian's face, the first real smile Eleanor had seen in days. He dropped to his knees and pressed his ear to her stomach. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I am your father, and I promise I will never let anyone make you feel worthless. I promise I will love you as you deserve." Eleanor ran her fingers through his hair. "And I promise I will never keep anything from you again. No more secrets." Julian stood and kissed her, deep and thorough. When they parted, he rested his hand on her stomach. "We will face society together. Let them gossip. Let them judge. I am a duke, and you are my duchess. That is all that matters." But even as Eleanor smiled, a chill ran through her. Lady Pemberton had played her hand, but Eleanor knew her aunt. She would not give up so easily. This battle was not over. And she was right. 2 weeks later, pamphlets began circulating in London. They detailed Eleanor's common birth. They questioned the legality of her marriage. They suggested she had seduced the Duke through trickery. Julian was furious. He hired investigators to find the source, but the damage was done. Invitations stopped coming. Former friends crossed the street to avoid them. The scandal was everything Lady Pemberton had promised. Eleanor felt the weight of it crushing her. "This is my fault," she told Julian one night. "I have ruined you." "You have ruined nothing," Julian insisted. "They are fools, all of them. We do not need them." But Eleanor saw the strain in his face, saw how the whispers wore on him. She made a decision. For Julian's sake, she would remove herself from the situation. "I will go to the country," she said, "until the baby is born. You can stay in London and rebuild your reputation. Tell them I am unwell. Tell them whatever you need to." "Absolutely not. We stay together." "Julian, please, I am trying to protect you." "And I am trying to protect you," Julian said fiercely. "Eleanor, do you not understand? You are my life now. Without you, all of this, the title, the wealth, the respect, it means nothing. I would rather be ruined with you than celebrated without you." Eleanor's heart swelled. "You truly mean that?" "With everything I am." They held each other as the storm raged around them, but they were together, and that made all the difference. Lady Pemberton made one final move. She approached the Prince Regent himself with her allegations. She demanded the marriage be annulled. She suggested Margaret as a more suitable match for the Duke. When Julian learned of this, his rage was incandescent. "Enough," he said. "It is time to end this." He called for his carriage and brought Eleanor to London. She was 7 months pregnant now, her belly round and beautiful. Julian had been attending her every moment, protective and tender. "Where are we going?" Eleanor asked. "To a ball." "Julian, we were not invited." "We do not need an invitation." The ball was at the home of the Countess of Harrington, one of the most influential women in society. Julian walked in with Eleanor on his arm, his head high. Conversation stopped. Everyone stared. The Countess approached, her face cold. "Your Grace, this is a private event." "I am aware," Julian said. "I have come to make a statement. This is highly irregular." "I do not care." Julian's voice rang through the ballroom. "I have something to say and you will all hear it." He led Eleanor to the center of the room. She was terrified, but Julian's hand on hers gave her strength. "I am Julian Blackwood, Duke of Rothshire," he began. "And this is my wife, Eleanor. You have all heard the rumors about her father, about her birth, about how she supposedly trapped me into marriage." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lady Pemberton stood in the corner, smiling with satisfaction. "I am here to tell you that every word of those rumors is true." Eleanor gasped. What was he doing? Julian continued. "Eleanor's father was common born. He bought a false title to give his daughter opportunities. And Eleanor came to me with nothing, no fortune, no connections, no grand family name." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. He was abandoning her. He was confirming their worst fears. "But I am also here to tell you this." Julian turned to Eleanor, his eyes blazing with love. "She is the finest person I have ever known. She is kind, intelligent, brave, and compassionate. She survived 3 years of cruelty and emerged with her spirit intact. She brought life back to my empty house. She gave me a reason to smile again. She is carrying my child, and I love her more than I have loved anything or anyone in my life." Eleanor's breath caught. The room was utterly silent. "So yes," Julian said, addressing the crowd again, "she is common-born, but she has more nobility in her smallest finger than most of you have in your entire bodies, and if you cannot accept her, then you cannot accept me. I will happily leave society behind if it means keeping her by my side." He pulled Eleanor close and kissed her in front of everyone. It was passionate, claiming, and utterly improper. Gasps echoed through the room. When Julian pulled back, Eleanor was crying. "You would give up everything for me." "I would give up anything for you. Don't you know that by now?" The Prince Regent stepped forward from where he had been watching. "Your Grace," he said to Julian, "that was quite a speech." Julian bowed. "Your Highness." "I was approached by Lady Pemberton. She demanded I intervene in your marriage." Julian's jaw tightened. "And?" The prince smiled. "I told her to leave and never waste my time again. Your marriage is your business, and frankly, if half of what you said about your wife is true, then you have chosen far better than most men of your station." He turned to Eleanor. "Your Grace, may I?" Eleanor was confused until the prince took her hand and kissed it. It was a gesture of acceptance, of respect, the highest approval in the land. The room erupted, some with applause, some with shocked whispers. But the prince's approval changed everything. Within moments, ladies began approaching Eleanor, offering congratulations. Lady Pemberton tried to leave, but Julian stopped her. "Not yet." He addressed the room again. "Lady Pemberton spread lies about my wife. She tried to destroy her reputation and our marriage. She did so out of greed and cruelty. I want it known that she is no longer welcome in my home or at any event I attend." Lady Pemberton's face went purple with rage. "You cannot do this!" "I am a duke. I can do exactly this." Julian's voice was cold. "You will leave London. You will leave Eleanor alone. If you ever approach us again, I will use every resource I have to destroy you. Do you understand? Lady Pemberton looked around, seeking support, but no one met her eyes. She had lost, completely. She fled the ball, Margaret trailing behind her. Eleanor would never see them again. As the evening went on, Eleanor found herself surrounded by well-wishers. The Countess of Harrington apologized for her coldness. Other ladies shared their own stories of struggling against society's expectations. Eleanor was accepted, finally and fully. But the best moment came when Julian pulled her onto the dance floor. They waltzed together, Eleanor's pregnant belly between them, their eyes locked on each other. "You are remarkable," Julian whispered. "You are everything," Eleanor replied. "We are going to be so happy," Julian promised. "You, me, and our baby. We are going to build a life full of love." "We already have," Eleanor said. She placed his hand on her stomach. The baby kicked, and Julian's eyes widened with wonder. "Did you feel that?" "Our child says hello," Julian laughed, the sound pure and joyful. He spun Eleanor around the dance floor, no longer caring what anyone thought. He had his wife, he had his future, he had his happiness. And Eleanor, looking at the man she loved, realized something profound. She had scrubbed floors for 3 years. She had been broken and beaten. She had lost everything. But she had survived. And in surviving, she had found something more precious than any title or fortune. She had found love. Real, honest, transforming love. The music swelled, the candles flickered, and Eleanor and Julian danced on, 2 souls who had found their way home to each other. 1 year later, Eleanor stood in the garden at Rothshire Hall. She held her daughter, Rose, in her arms. The baby had Julian's grey eyes and Eleanor's dark hair. She was perfect. Julian came up behind them and wrapped his arms around them both. "My 2 favourite people," he murmured. 3, Eleanor corrected, placing his hand on her stomach. "I am with child again." Julian's face lit up. "Truly?" "Truly?" He kissed her, long and sweet. Rose gurgled happily between them. The past year had been full of joy. Eleanor had embraced her role as Duchess. She had opened the estate to local families in need. She had started a school for poor children. She had used her own painful past to help others. Julian had never been happier. His house was full of laughter now, full of life, full of love. "Do you ever regret it?" Eleanor asked. "Marrying me?" "Never. Not for a single moment." Julian looked at her seriously. "You saved me, Eleanor. I was half alive before you. Now I am whole." "You saved me first," Eleanor said. "You saw me when I was invisible. You gave me worth when I thought I had none." "We saved each other," Julian said, "and we will keep saving each other, every day, for the rest of our lives." They stood together in the garden, their daughter between them, another child on the way. The roses bloomed around them, filling the air with sweetness. Eleanor thought of the girl she used to be, the girl who scrubbed floors, the girl who believed she would never matter. She was gone now, transformed into this woman, this wife, this mother, this Duchess. But she had not forgotten her. She would never forget, because that pain had shaped her. It had made her strong. It had prepared her for the joy she now held. "I love you," she whispered to Julian. "I love you more," he replied. "Impossible." "Want to argue about it?" Eleanor laughed. "Every day for the rest of our lives." And they did. They laughed and loved and lived. They raised their children in a home full of warmth. They grew old together, their love only deepening with time. Years later, when Eleanor was on her deathbed, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Julian held her hand just as he had on their wedding day. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For scrubbing my floors, for being broken, for surviving, for finding me, for loving me." Julian's tears fell onto their joined hands. "For being you." Eleanor smiled, the same smile that had first captured his heart decades ago. Thank you for seeing me. Not the servant, not the common-born girl, not the scandal. Just me. I will always see you, Julian promised, in this life and the next. Eleanor closed her eyes, content. She had been nothing. She had been everything. She had been loved. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The royal birthmark on her shoulder had meant nothing in the end. No secret heritage, no hidden royalty. Just a mark she was born with. Meaningless, except as a reminder that sometimes the stories we tell ourselves about destiny are wrong. Destiny had not come from a birthmark. It had come from kindness, from courage, from love. And that, Eleanor knew, was the greatest story of all.